Hi, everyone. This is Caroline Miller. I'm your host for Just Read It. It's a book talk show with writers from the Pacific Northwest who gather to talk about what's going on with the New York bestsellers. Today, we're going to discuss Amor Towles' latest novel, The Lincoln Highway. It's a 600-page tome, I warn you, with two of my wonderful guests, David Fuks and Dale Hess. Now, David is an award-winning short story writer. And what is the title of the volume in which your story appears, David?
It was American Fiction number 17.
American Fiction number 17. Okay. And you kind of switched, you're going into playwriting. What's the status there?
I'm working on a play that is getting ready for production. It's called Alma de Luna, and I'm very excited about it. Jane Unger will be our director.
Oh, good old Irish play, huh? All right. And Dale, you, like me, are a longtime blogger. Give us the name of your blog.
My blog is called The Dilettante's Dilemma.
Okay.
And the dilettantsdilemma.com will get you right there. No punctuation, no nothing.
Okay. And what do you focus on, Dale? What's your feature?
Well, I do a lot of politics, but it's the political, it's the psychological infrastructure of politics that has always interested me the most, particularly at a time when the country is psychologically divided and getting more divided. I keep coming up with why is that and what can we do? Okay.
That
sort of stuff.
For seekers of knowledge and wisdom, Dale Hess.
Oh, that too, right.
That's it. Now, we are going to talk about The Lincoln Highway, which is Towles' third novel, a very ambitious kind of, I don't know whether you guys would call it a coming of age story or a road trip story or both. The main character is Billy, who is, as the book opens, is being returned from a juvenile detention center, having socked a local thug who was rude about his father. The thug got killed, and Emmett had to pay the price. But he's coming home because his father has died, and he has a little brother about 10. Would you say that, David? He's about 10?
Yes, about 10. So Emmett is the principal character, and Billy is the little brother.
Is the little brother who carries an alphabet book around that talks about classical heroes, which almost becomes a character itself in the book, but we'll talk about that later. Anyway, unknowns to him, two of his detention cronies sneak a ride in the sheriff's car that brings Emmett back. And when they learn their father, Emmett's father, has left them with a Studebaker, the usurpers have plans of their own, which are different from Emmett and Billy's. Now, fill us in, Dale. Fill us in with any details that you think are critical.
Well, I think I would call it a quest story. Or 4 quest stories, maybe. Emmett on the good guy's side and Duchess on the bad guy's side are people who have agendas. There's stuff that needs to get done, and what Emmett wants to do can't be done if Duchess does what he wants to do. So the two are at odds right from the beginning.
In the middle is Wooly, who is a rich kid that's troubled.
Wooly has been thrown out of practically every high-priced boarding school on the continent. And that's how he finally wound up at Salina, Kansas, at the same juvenile detention home with the others. Amazing.
Well, okay, so Emmett and Billy want to go to California. And
that's right.
Emmett wants to start a new life, and Billy is in the quest for his mother, who abandoned them when he was born, right? But Duchess and Wooly, they have other plans. What are they, David?
Well, Wooly is a child of significant wealth. There is a cabin that the family that Wooly comes from has, where there's a safe in which Wooly suggests that there's a significant amount of money in, and so he and Duchess decide to travel east to New York to be able to go to this cabin and collect the money and be able to move forward. And basically, they steal Emmett's car to be able to do that, and it causes Emmett and Billy to have to ride the rails illegally to hop on a freight train to New York, which is going in the opposite direction that they would like to go.
All right, so that fills our audience in with the plot twist. And during this course, of course, when you're riding the rails, you're going to meet a lot of characters. But I'm going to start with the character that isn't a character. Billy has this faith in Professor Abernathy, who wrote this book. And I think it's called Alphabets, which tells the stories of classical heroes like Ulysses. And it seems to dominate Billy's perspective, and that influences the other four boys. Would you agree with that, Dale?
Well, it certainly influences what happens in the story, and in that way, it influences them. I don't think any of the other three boys, not Wooly or Duchess or Emmett, has any kind of belief in it. There's a bunch of characters from A to Z. Each one gets 8 pages, and that's how their story is told. The other three don't believe that the stories have any particular significance, but people that Billy meets along the way are absolutely taken over by this story. And that's where I'd like to hear David's view of this. That's where the book comes from a kind of an adventure quest, sort of a novel, to a magical realism touch.
I caught that too.
Some really, really unusual things happen to a black guy they meet in the boxcar who says his name is Ulysses.
Yes.
Which is kind of an interesting thing. What do you think, David?
So I think that the structure of the book is deeply focused on the heroic, and part of what's so interesting about this novel is that the characters are mundane, simple people in many ways. Unlike The Gentleman in Moscow, which was Towles' most recent book. I think it was his second novel. That was a book about someone who was a noble person in a world that was somewhat ignoble, and in the context of being restricted to one place. This book is almost diametrically opposite. It is about people who are sort of salt of the earth, common folks seeking to be on a quest, yet they exhibit a level of nobility which is quite remarkable. I mean, there's a scene where when Emmett has returned to his home in Nebraska, where he is confronted by the person whose brother he killed accidentally, and Emmett allows that other young man to beat him without ever resisting, and it's an act of astounding heroism in some ways. The book is very reflective of the kind of quest or the experiences that happen in Greek literature, particularly. It's sort of a Homeric structure.
Well, it is. The Odyssey comes to mind.
Absolutely. Well, and there's no.
Never gets to the port that he's looking for, and that's
the presence of a character named Ulysses.
Yes.
And the relationship to that, all of that literature is so clearly evident. What is happening, I think, is Towles is elevating these young people to the mythic, and their travels, much like those of Ulysses, are not linear. They get batted about by the winds of fate and by the nature of the company they're keeping, and it causes them to have an astounding adventure. It's in terms of structure, it's really quite remarkable. And I have to say, Carrie, your warning of the length of the book belies the fact that it is the smoothest reading you
It
can
is.
do. Towles is such an elegant writer.
Well, let me pick up your point and toss it back to Dale, because Dale, David describes it as an epic and heroic, which you'd probably agree. But you also talked about the sort of magical realism, which to me circles around Professor Abernathy, because they do find Professor Abernathy in a high tower, glass tower, where he is writing.
He's in the Empire State Building.
Yes, yes. Oh, I like the glass tower better, but that's okay.
It was classic, Carolyn.
In any case, yes, and they find him. And the minute he hears about Ulysses, of course, he goes off to meet this person. I'd like you to get your magical realism out of that, but I also want to throw something at you, because as I was reading other critiques, naturally, Spike Lee made some comment about the Black person who always resolves things. And I don't think it was intended as a compliment to white literature that resolves issues that way. If you got a response about that, please. But magical realism, please. What's your take?
Well, it shows up in a lot of different places. Let me pick two. Ulysses is a really, really big, strong Black guy. And he shows up in this boxcar just in time to save Billy's life. And there's no reason why he would be interested. Let's see. Billy has some things in his pack. He has some money. And the guy who's Pastor John, the guy who's trying to take all the money, is really, really interested in the money. But Billy's willing to give up the money. He's not willing to give up the backpack. And that intrigues Pastor John. What on earth is in the backpack that Billy is not willing to give up? Well, it's the book that's in the backpack. And that's what Billy is not willing to give up. That would have been a real surprise to Pastor John, I think. But Ulysses saves Billy and throws Pastor John off the boxcar, and they sit down, and Billy reads to him the story of Ulysses. And not only that, he says, "You are Ulysses. Ulysses' story is your story. And that means you've got 2 more years left to reconcile, to locate and reconcile with your wife. And you need to get at that right away." And he does.
He takes Billy seriously, yes.
Everybody takes Billy seriously. It's incredible.
Except his brother.
Professor Abernathy takes Billy seriously.
Very seriously.
You indicated that Professor Abernathy sits down with Billy. It says, thanks to Woolley, who knows everybody in New York, takes Billy seriously, and Billy tells him the wonderful adventures he's had with his book. He leaves to go meet Ulysses and never comes back. He never goes back to his office. His life changes instantly and completely. I don't think so.
He in fact changed his name. He changed his name to Abacus, which is a very interesting.
I'd forgotten that.
Good for you.
That's a.
Well, there's
those are the magical parts.
Yeah. Well, yes, you get a sense, the reader gets a sense something magical has changed. You may not know what it is, but it's been life-changing. Do either of you care to comment on the why? I mean, it's an alphabet book. And Y is where it's a blank page where you write your own history. Anything mystical or magical about that? I mean, Billy hasn't had the courage or the willingness yet.
Well, but let's just talk about that. Why doesn't Billy write in his page?
My question. Yes. Why?
Well, he says why.
Oh, refresh my memory.
You start in the middle. He doesn't know where the middle is yet.
Oh, that's right. Oh.
Incidentally, is structurally a great way to begin a book.
It's a great way to begin a book.
If you start, if you're starting with Once Upon a Time, you're not doing it right. I think you have to really understand that there's a set of given circumstances that are the drivers for whatever the characters are going through, and those are established before the book begins. And Billy has yet to discover that. But Abernathy really does help him to discover that, and he starts to become a writer. Billy's a very intriguing character. He's
very intriguing. But we're running out of time, and I want to touch on the ambiguity of the ending.
How much time are we running out of, Carol?
We got about 3 minutes, so we've got to
go ahead.
I just want to say that when I closed the book, I had a sense of an American tragedy. Because when Emmett discovers the consequences of his last act, which mirrors the first act, and we see what happened to the other boys, what is going to happen to Emmett? And I saw it really as an American tragedy, people striving for things and being destroyed in the attempt to attain.
So I'm going to beg to differ with you. I think that there's a juxtaposition here. Duchess and Woolley are on the wrong side of virtue in this circumstance. Woolley because he's got some significant emotional problems. Duchess because he's a bit of a sociopath. But the book ends really with Emmett and Billy and the young woman Sally, who had taken care of Billy while Emmett was in the juvenile facility, driving off into the sunset, heading west and trying to move forward with the adventure that they had wanted to undertake to begin with. Right. In many ways, that's sort of a classic. It's considered comedy. It's not true comedy, but it's a classic happy ending. But it's juxtaposed to the unhappy ending of the other characters, and I think that's a really that's a very interesting perspective. I mean, it's
let's get Dale in here. I disagree because it isn't going to end happily, but I want to get Dale's viewpoint in here.
Well, I agree with David. I mean, not only do they head off to California, but they go to Times Square first, so they can start at the right place to go to California. Now, if you want to say that the true, really, really happy ending is that they follow the trail of postcards and find Billy's mother and so on, I don't think that's going to happen. They'll have to pull another magic trick out to do that.
Okay.
But the two of them are headed off, and Sally is with them for the purpose of dropping them off in California and then going off to be on her own finally.
She's
That's
taking
what she
care of
wants.
All right. I'm the guest host, and I get to say both of you are right, but I do feel because Emmett is a moral person, he is going to suffer. And I think that's...
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. When he finds out he's committed the same sin twice, he will suffer personally, internally.
I'm not certain he finds out.
Well,
I don't think
David, you were right. I think it is the odyssey that is never fulfilled, the quest that is never satisfied.
Well, he begins by distinguishing between being the cause and being the agent In
Well,
both of those, I think he is the agent and not the cause.
we must close there because
Okay.
I strongly disagree with that. But in any case, let our audience read this wonderful book and decide. So first, I'm going to ask you to vote. Would you recommend Dale this book?
I would absolutely, particularly on the grounds of the characters that he provides.
Right. Oh, yeah. Masterful. Embarrassingly masterful. Right.
Mhm.
David, what about you?
Of course, it's remarkable storytelling. It's elegantly written, and it stays with you for a long time afterwards.
It sure does. It sure does. You can see we're going to have coffee later and duke this out, the ending.
Let the duking begin.
Okay. I want to thank my wonderful guests for being here with us today. Dale, before we leave, please give us again the name of your blog.
Be glad to. It's called The Dilettante's Dilemma.
And it can be quite dilemma-ing, audience.
I agree.
So do check in on him. And David, your award-winning story is in the anthology. Give us the name and the title of your prize, the short story.
The short story is called Distinctions, and it's published in American Fiction 17, and it's great company to be published alongside so many good writers. And Distinctions is a story of two Holocaust survivors and their different paths in America.
Okay. Oh, no, audience, if that doesn't send you looking for the book, I don't know what will. Well, we've come to the end of another episode of Just Read It. Please come back. We publish every 2 months, so a good idea would be to subscribe. We don't sell ads. We don't sell your name. So come join us next time. We'll have more books to discuss and pique your appetite. Thank you so much for joining us for Just Read It.